Hello, this is part 2 of the Extreme Cinema Podcast David Lynch special. If you've not already heard part 1 and would like to hear us discuss David Lynch's work from Eraserhead to Twin Peaks Season 1 and 2, then please go and check out the previous week's episode. In this episode, we discuss Lynch's work from Wild at Heart to Twin Peaks: A Return. I hope you enjoy. Next up, Lynch left to do Wild at Heart, which was a rare box office success for David Lynch, because a lot of his films actually don't make money at the box office. They're just classics, but people be sleeping on them. I love it. I love it. It's so good. And there's also a kind of Lynch fan, because this one really isn't too serious. It's
No,
really
very not.
pulpy. There is a kind of Lynch fan that doesn't really like this film, and shame on them. It's one of his fucking best. Nick Cage.
Nick Cage.
I mean, I would say my favorite performance of him. Probably him at his best. And this is wild Nick Cage. This isn't Nick Cage really, holding it back like an adaptation. Wild Nick Cage, and David Lynch knows how to use that energy in his snakeskin jacket, which represents his individuality and his belief in personal freedom. Laura Dern, I mean, sexiest fucking film couple of the 90s, and the 90s was, okay, maybe not, maybe Bound, but,
Yeah.
it's up there. And the 90s was not known for its restraint in terms of sex on screen.
It was not.
Willem Dafoe is Bobby Peru. Willem Dafoe, one of his great villain roles. I mean, this and Green Goblin, Jesus Christ. It's mad road trip. This is Wizard of Oz. He was
Wizard of
putting
Oz,
that influence at the forefront of this work. Jesus fucking Christ. It's a mental road trip. The plot is literal. A lot of weird shit happens in it. One of the things I think Lynch loved a lot is little asides, and there's one with Sherilyn Fenn, which is pure Lynch, and where he shoots stuff's very weird. And when they get to what's the town called, Tuna or something,
yeah.
then it becomes a lot darker. But it's this mad, passionate road trip movie. There's so much fire imagery. There's so fucking heavy metal in it. The soundtrack is killer. I mean, it's I think Anna Lilia Mearpaw, who directed Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, basically said it's the best movie of all time for her, and what is there not to like in this film? And she's 100% right.
Yeah, I love this movie, obviously. I'm not as huge on it as you are. It's further down on the Lynch list for me, and that is still a 9 out of 10 for me. That's like saying it's further down on the Lynch list is like saying what's your favorite child. It's
Yeah,
it's
that's
ridiculous,
true.
but it's love Nick Cage in it, obviously. Absolute maniac. And this is full Nick Cage.
So many classic Cage moments.
Yeah.
Not just him screaming Lula. I mean, the musical sequence is I think when I first watched that, I was like, okay, this is the best thing ever. I'm sorry. That scene is one of my favorite scenes ever, when it goes from fucking power mad to Elvis so quick.
And it's such an odd Lynch film because it's still very Lynch. It's super Lynch, but it's also not Lynch at all at the same time.
It's because it's very literal. The
It's
story
very
is
literal.
actually happening.
Yeah. And you see a lot in this film of stuff he'd later, stuff he'd explore a bit more, where road trips and all that kind of stuff, and putting literal sense into crazy stuff. It's a very interesting movie. Well,
It's a very interesting movie, but it's so fun.
That's the main takeaway, I think. It's very fun. It's not Blue Velvet. It's not gonna make you feel horrific. It's a very fun film. It has some dark shit, but it's still a fun film.
I think as well, it's not you obviously could write a dissertation on any of Lynch's films, but
Yeah,
it's not oh, how do I interpret it? Everything in the film is apparent to a comical level. It's that Lynch tone again of irony but not irony. And he's using the imagery from the Wizard of Oz in this, so we understand all the character dynamics without him even having to sort of explore them necessarily, even though they are well explored as well. It's just you see the mother as the wicked witch of the West, and then you're like, we know who she is instantly.
yeah, definitely. It's very cut and dry, a lot more than probably any other well, no, still straight story to talk about, but but the more other Lynches.
It's just everyone, you're gonna have a bloody blast watching this, and this isn't, I think, if you were to do a kind of what's the game show Pointless, where you'd ask people on the street, name a David Lynch movie, I don't think this would come up very much out of 100 people.
No, same.
But
I think Straight Story would be bottom, and then I think it'd be
yes,
this.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Maybe Inland Empire, but like it's so fucking entertaining. It's so extra. Like the sex and violence in this film is at 11.
Oh yeah.
And in a not in I mean, okay, there are some scenes which are again dark, but like it's in this like popcorn way. Like it's kind of like the ultimate romance road trip, a bit actiony, criminal underbelly, running away from the law film. It's like the perfect version of that. I wouldn't say it's a perfect film, frankly. It's very close to it, but like it's like everything you could ever want in that genre of movie.
Yeah, very much so.
And yeah, this film is a success. It wins the Palme d'Or.
It does,
It's
yeah, yeah.
and American films don't often win that.
No, no. So it's yeah, it is a big success, which is weird why it's not as well known now.
I have the Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray is, I think they've re-released it since my copy, but the Blu-ray is kind of a shocking quality, like very
Yeah.
noticeably. I would love to see this in the cinema at some point. Like it's one of the best 90s films, and that's saying something as we'll go to it. If this is sort of the fun one, we're getting into, I would say, Lynch's darkest film yet, and that is the prequel to Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which at the time was called by one critic the worst movie ever made. Um, it baffled people because the audience of Twin Peaks were used to a certain tone, and this film is terrifying, and not terrifying in a spooky movie way. It's terrifying in the exploration of abuse, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Once, the point of Twin Peaks, or one of the central points of Twin Peaks, is here's the homecoming queen, this, again, all-American blonde-haired girl, and then you slowly see, I mean, not even, it's in the first episode, it starts, the dark side of her life. And this film is about that dark side of her life,
It is
and it's
so
really
dark.
scary.
It is really scary. It's really dark. I came around on this movie because when I first met you, I told you I didn't like it. And it was, you were blown away. But I've seen it many times since, and I actually love the movie now. But it is so shocking. It's so, like, not Twin Peaks style really at all. It bears the name and then it just goes brutal on you.
The first, like, half an hour is kind of a parody of Twin Peaks, which itself was a parody of American
Yeah, yeah.
television. I love the first half. I think the when it starts and you got David Lynch's character, because David Lynch is in this and he's my favorite,
It is, yeah.
Detective Gordon, he's my favorite character other than Coop in Twin Peaks. But you've got, what's his face? Chris Isaac and Kiefer Sutherland on their little case in the town where the first girl who Bob murdered. Bob is not. We're not spoiling anything. Don't fucking
You would
worry.
not spoil it, no.
Yeah, and it's like Twin Peaks, but everyone's miserable and horrible. And it's like such a fuck you to Twin Peaks fans. And then it goes to Twin Peaks, and similar to the way Twin Peaks: The Return starts, you get the Twin Peaks music for about 1 second, and then
Yeah.
it's like, oh, don't be expecting Twin Peaks now. Don't, it's dark. Lara Flynn Boyle, who plays Donna, is recast. The rumors were she didn't want to do nudity. It was actually a scheduling thing. She's replaced by Moira Kelly, who fans take issue with. I think she's really good, and I like Moira Kelly as an actor.
Yeah, yeah.
It explores the last days of Laura Palmer's life. It adds a lot to Twin Peaks lore. Like, there's stuff in this film which 25 years later makes sense in Twin Peaks
Oh,
Twin
so
Peaks: The
much, yeah.
Return. David
Bowie.
Bowie.
Yeah.
Bowie.
All the Bowie stuff.
I mean, to say the greatest scene in that film, I don't even know if that's true, because there's the pink room sequence and the actual murder sequence. But my God, that dream sequence where he comes in, it's absolutely, absolutely phenomenal. And everyone who watched that thing at the time was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. I think that was the big why people hated it at the time. It was so, what the fuck is happening? Like, we know what Twin Peaks is. It probably got such a bad reputation as well because people just wanted to know what the hell happened after season 2, and instead they got this brutal prequel. Like,
Basically, like, the first weekend this cleaned up at the box office, and then it crashed. There's
yeah.
footage, I don't remember if it's on the Blu-ray or if it's on YouTube, it's probably on both, of like the Japanese audience, because Twin Peaks was hella popular in Japan. There was coffee adverts with all the Twin Peaks characters, which are brilliant, and you have to watch them. Like, they had its own little story, these coffee adverts, and it's interviewing people when they come out, because Twin Peaks was a phenomenon there, and they were all like, "What was that? We have no clue." You have to watch the show first and then watch this. We are
Yeah,
kind of
definitely. Yeah.
on eggshells right now, because there is not really a way to talk about this without spoiling Twin Peaks.
No.
It's really dark. It is my favorite film score of all time, the Fire Walk With Me theme. It's got elements of the Twin Peaks themes in there, in this much darker, brooding theme music. There's a few tracks in there by Lynch, which are very weird. The Badalamenti ones, though, really are the standouts. I mean, this is anyone's best work, in my opinion, for film
Yeah,
score.
yeah.
I rated this a bit less than I do now. I always loved it, but I rated it a bit less because I think some of the acting from some of the Twin Peaks cast isn't very good in it, but now come around and I can see what the performances are going for. I don't think it's perfect, because I do think some of the supporting roles, they might not understand what they're
Yeah.
doing. Lynch might not be directing them well enough, because they might be used to the TV, and they got this. Yeah, what it does for the Twin Peaks is great. I mean, Harry Dean Stanton's character
Oh,
is great. I mean, Harry Dean Stanton's
what a
a
fucking legend. Oh my god.
common Lynch
Yeah.
collaborator. It's one of the scariest, best horror films ever made, because it's a horror film.
Yeah, definitely. If you like horror, you like Twin Peaks, and you've not seen this, what are you doing?
And Cheryl Lee's performance is one of the best of all time. The way
There
she
we go again.
captures, the way she captures Laura Palmer, and that, I mean, the horror, the
The
like actual
scene,
horror
yeah, the
of her life.
horrifying scene is it's there's some stuff in this that is genuinely terrifying, and if you like that kind of stuff, you need to see it.
You need to, and you need to watch the show first, because I guess like people like, oh, do I watch the prequel movie first? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, this film, people have now come around to it being a masterpiece. And I'm thinking back to something I read. I wouldn't quite call it a masterpiece as good as it is. I go back to something I read about Twin Peaks: The Return, that the first couple of episodes, the viewership was mainly people who watched Twin Peaks at the time. They were older audiences,
Yeah.
actual boomers. And then by the end, it was all millennial and Gen Z audience. Like, the original Twin Peaks audience had left that, and we, people our age who are consuming it and getting it. Like, it's the same thing. The audience that Twin Peaks had was a lot of, even for the time, older people, because it had that like nostalgia for the 50s,
Yeah,
for
it did,
50s
yeah.
Americana, even though it's set in the contemporary. That's not in Fire Walk With Me, and that's not in The Return. And a lot of the very comforting stuff in the original run, which I think is brilliant, it's not in The
It's
Return or
not
Fire
there at
Walk With
all.
Me.
No, no. So that's why it alienated him a lot, but good. Like,
You know, a friend of mine always talks about the color grading
yeah,
changing,
yeah.
because it's so golden and pleasant in the original series, and then it just becomes washed out and realistic.
Yeah, super realistic and washed out in Return, especially.
There's a lot cut out. You can watch the missing pieces on some of the Blu-rays have it, the deleted scenes. I've only seen a few of them because I kind of can't be bothered to sit through an hour and a half of deleted scenes. And they have more of the original town in it, and more kind of, oh, here's XYZ character back.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's
Read
probably
the
for the
book as
best it
well.
doesn't. Oh, I've
I
never
have
read the book.
I have the book. It's good, yeah.
Yeah.
It gives a lot of lore as well. That's Mark Frost wrote that.
That's when Aliens, because Mark Frost is really keen on
It
Aliens,
did do
right?
Aliens, yeah, that's when Aliens.
Yeah, it's only it's, you could ignore that it's
Oh,
very
you could
subtle in the
completely
show.
ignore it, but it's got some cool stuff in.
Do you have anything more to add on this, or shall we move
No,
to?
go to the next one, which again, so much to talk about.
Would you like to introduce this one, Dom, as it's your favorite?
I have no idea what to say about this movie. It's one of the greatest movies ever released, and it's
Also very divisive at the time.
incredibly divisive at the time, and it's a Lynch people don't talk about as much. There's so much in this movie that is just genius, and I had to just keep saying to you over and over again, Steady, this is the best Lynch. This is unbelievable. Lost Highway. Yeah, it's incredible.
I mean, this is Lynch's return to good luck understanding this film.
Oh, absolutely. This some of the moments in this movie though, like there's the bit that first blew me away ever is he's at the party and the white-faced man puts him on the phone and to the other white-faced man, and I'm just, oh my god, what full on horror, like full
Full on,
on.
it's a horror film.
Yeah, it's an absolute horrifying horror film. but it is so genius. Like, even parts I don't even still get. That I still am like, that has to be genius though. Like, it can't be anything else. Like, because it's, you see movies like this where you're like, this feels like it could be nonsense. This never has any of this.
It's
It
not
is
nonsense.
complete genius all the way through.
At the time, this was divisive. Now it's loved.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think except for June, everything is basically really well liked at this point. But the Mystery Man sequence that you're talking about, that was always like known as one of the scariest scenes ever. It's just really creepy. But the plot, I mean, Bill Pullman is phenomenal, and then the kind of the way it turns itself around in the second half is great. It's if you've seen, because I had seen Cache by Michael Haneke before,
Very, very similar to
literally
Cachet,
the
yeah.
same setup.
Yeah.
I think initially when I saw this, I thought, oh, the sets are a bit wonky, and now I'm like, oh, the atmosphere they create is incredible. The use of the VHS tapes is incredible. What happens in
Yeah.
the second half, you can interpret it
Oh,
literally, you can interpret it metaphorically.
absolutely mind blowing the twist of the second half. What happens? Like, it, first time I saw this, I was like, what? Oh, what is what?
And you've got the that motif of the, the duality of the women. Patricia Arquette's character who's
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
dual role.
Yeah, there's a lot that Lynch does it with character in this that will confuse you a lot if you only watch it once. Especially, this is a, you have to watch this film multiple times to even understand who's playing who at what moment. It's a confusing but absolutely genius movie. And can we talk about the score as well, please?
Oh, not only Badalamenti's back, the soundtrack is the most underrated soundtrack ever. That and Natural Born Killers, I'd say.
Yeah,
Um,
probably. This is where Rammstein came from. Nobody knew the fuck Rammstein were before this film came out. Like, it's absolutely incredible.
I have so much admiration for David Lynch because, like I said, like the Eraserhead soundtrack's like a very big influence in like experimental metal scenes. But like David Lynch in his 50s at this point is just like, hey, I'm gonna put a bunch of fucking industrial metal in my film. You can't stop me.
Like, obviously, him and Trent have always been quite close since Trent came into the scene anyway. Trent's the biggest industrial metal person, but even like introducing Ramstein there, you've got Manson, you've got lots of other smaller. It's ridiculous. It's, guy was 50 when he made this, and he's putting in industrial metal that even millennials hadn't heard of. Well, not millennials at the time, obviously, but
Gen X.
Gen X hadn't heard of. Like,
And it adds so much intensity. The Manson and the Ramstein needle drops are
oh,
visceral scenes.
the ending bit with the Ramstein needle drop. Oh my god, what a. It's genius.
But Bowie's theme in this, the second the film starts with the road whooshing by, the font, the
Yeah.
David Bowie song, I was literally like, this is incredible. One of the
I,
best opening credit
Oh
sequences of the
yeah,
time.
I will gush about this film forever because it's in my top 10 films ever. Easily my favorite Lynch, and number 5 or 6 in my top 10 films ever. It just blows me away every single time I see it. Like,
I, I love it
little,
too. I love
yeah,
it too, but it's what you said about Wild at Heart. For me, it's a lesser Lynch, but you say a lesser Lynch,
yeah,
it doesn't really matter. It's still an all-time fantastic film. And I feel like my first response to it when I first saw it, because I think, unless you're coming from the time you will have seen Mulholland Drive first, is that a lot of the things in this he would explore later in Mulholland Drive, like
yes, yeah.
in a bit more depth. But that doesn't mean they're devoid of depth or meaning or interesting in this film. And every single time I've watched Lost Highway, I've liked it more. I think I had it at 7 out of 10 when I first saw it. It is now a like high up 9.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's just the moments in this movie that make it. Like the bit towards the end when he's comes to the cabin and then it's just the mystery band and turns the camera round on him. Oh,
Yeah,
it's, oh my god, it's incredible.
I literally, I was just thinking that, and I was just like, how do I describe this without spoiling the film? Because, oh, that sequence is incredible. There's a tailgating sequence. That
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
arc with the gangster is so good. He's so funny. It's amazing. Everyone should go and watch every single David Lynch film, including this one.
Yeah, because it's hard to talk about anything else we've just not in Lost Highway without spoiling it now, because there is a lot in there.
I think the theme of duality is so Lynchian at this point in his career, like
Oh
Blue
yeah,
Velvet
massively.
and
Yeah.
Twin Peaks, and now this, and it's now kind of what he's known for almost. And again, this motif of the blonde-haired woman and the black-haired woman, it's in here. And it's in this, which is kind of why I think of Mulholland Drive. I mean, fuck, Patricia Arquette's so good. And I
She
remember
is
seeing
amazing.
an
Yeah.
interview with her where she was just like, every film I've ever done is like not liked at the time and then becomes a cult classic later, which is absolutely true.
Yeah, it is very true. It seems to be everything she does. Yeah.
It's a really dark film. I think this is Lynch's most overt horror film.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's obviously Fire Walk with Me that we just talked about, very horror, but Lost Highway just has a different sense to it that it just is really scary, especially some of the moments like walking through the apartment, just the
I
cameras and
was that
everything.
the scene that ushers in the second act when it's flipping between the VHS tapes and
Yeah,
him
yeah.
is genius editing. When you get into like the bits when they're making pornography and it's in that mansion and he's walking through it, and another thing that is really influential in games of David Lynch is the kind of walking into rooms and rooms changing and walking out and it changing too. I mean, it's
Yeah, very, very Lynch as well.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That Lynch tone is definitely there, and it's got that real dark edge to it here. Like the Mystery Man sequence, you could view it as kind of funny, but it's not.
Oh, you could maybe see it as humorous, and you'd be like, "Oh, who's this guy?" And then he's the most terrifying thing that's ever happened. Like one of my favorite antagonists ever. I adore him. And nobody knows what the hell he is. Nobody has a clue.
I mean, he also. Should we get into the real life? Because can we do that without spoiling this film?
Kind of. I think.
The actor who plays the Mystery Man in real life did the thing that the film is about.
Yes, he did.
Very
Yes,
famously.
it's a bit fucked up, but it adds so much to it. Once you know that as well, it's like, oh my god, okay. Like
Lynch's casting, it's genius.
he plays horror. He casts horrifying people to play horrifying people.
um, so how do you follow up one of the best horror film in the 90s is Audition, actually, but then it's Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. So how do you follow up one of the best horror films of the 90s, one of the darkest thrillers? This film bombed, this film was controversial.
Yeah, yeah.
I think this and Wild at Heart are Lynch's only still rated 18 films. How do you follow that up? You work with Disney.
You do a Disney film.
You make his most normal film. I mean, like similar with The Elephant Man, there is like that, like not dark because it's all very light and everyone's friendly, but you get that like weirdness of Americana in there in the straight story. But ultimately, it's just a very heartwarming film about
Yeah,
this is about the last days of the World War II generation, basically being commonplace in America. And
it,
Richard Farnsworth gives an outstanding performance as this old guy who can't drive and wants to make amends with his brother, so drives his lawnmower across the state.
yeah, it is. It's a big anomaly in Lynch's body of work, but it's a very
Rated
good
U.
film. Rated U, yeah, Universal. Like it's a very nice film. It's so weird that it's David Lynch. It has his little bits in there. It has Americana, like you said, and it has some Lynchian themes, not exploring them too deep, otherwise it won't be a U, but it has them there. But it's a nice little film. It's such an anomaly we could never talk about on this podcast if we weren't doing a Lynch special.
He's an amazing character. Sissy Spacek's very good. I don't quite know if you'd play someone with mental disabilities quite like that anymore, but
No, probably not. No.
probably not. But it's still a very good performance. Yeah, Oscar nominated. It also bombed. I mean, this is probably his most obscure film.
I think so, yeah.
There's not a Blu-ray release. I have the DVD copy of it, but
Yeah,
there's
that's
not.
all I have. I just have the DVD as well.
It's a really nice film. I mean, there's not much plot. I remember watching the nostalgia critic review of it is fucking insane, like bad.
I've not
He did it
seen
in
it.
Disney December. Oh, he's like, it's really boring, but I enjoyed it, and it's not boring. It's not boring at all, Doug. But
Doug,
it's
good
like
doctor.
it's not boring, but not a lot happens. It's not a slow film because like he's constantly on his journey, but not a lot happens. He just goes and meets people and everyone's very friendly. That's the film.
Yeah,
Everyone's a nice person in it, which I like films like that.
That is the film, and it's a fun one. It's a cute little Lynch film. Show your kids
Uh,
it.
Show your kids, show your parents. My mum really liked it when I watched it with her. Some quite touching moments. I know it's
Yeah,
been with
there
his
are. Yeah,
brother, but
yeah.
like I always find a scene at the bar where he's talking with the other World War II veteran. That's a
Oh
very
yeah,
touching
it's lovely.
moment.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot of like just touching, kind of human, emotional moments, and it's what the film is.
If you want a nice little film to settle down and relax to in the evening, it's this one. It's funny because I think unless you're a hardcore David Lynch fan, of all the like films that we've had to like say, oh, this will make you feel terrible, I think this is the hardest sell for our audience.
For our audience, it's the hardest sell. But if you've just watched Lost Highway or Fire Walk with Me, watch this for a little little reprieve.
Little light relief.
Yeah. So what do we get to next after
Well, what
this
do you do when
lovely
you
little
make
thing?
a family-friendly Disney film? You go and make Mulholland Drive.
You make Mulholland fucking Drive.
You go and make a fucking terrifying film with one of the most famous jump scares of all time.
Yeah, imagine seeing that at the moment, like seeing Mulholland Drive when it first came out, and seeing that jump scare and being like,
I
"Oh my
knew it was
god!"
coming because I used to watch, film 2000 and whatever, and they did a top 5 scariest moments, and I think this was number 1 or 2 on it.
Yeah, I can see it being on there. I've seen it at the top of so many like, oh, best jump scare lists and everything.
But that might be what it's known for, in part. Another
Yeah,
thing it's known for is a consortium of film critics. I think the BBC ran this poll, voted it the best film of the 21st century, and it's up there.
yeah,
It would be in my top 5 of the 21st century. That's for certain.
absolutely up there. Like, if I talk about not just personal favorite, but genuinely unbelievably created, thematic, character driven, fucking weird out there movies, it's unbelievable.
If you look on like early internet forums, I mean, a lot of these are preserved. Everyone speculating what happens in this film, and unlike Eraserhead, where Lynch is like, "I'm not talking about it," Lynch is like, "I'm not talking about it, but there is a thing that
There's an
happens in
answer.
this film. It
Yeah.
is decipherable, and you want to decipher it so bad. It's like the best puzzle movie ever." Yeah, it is. It is better than Primer,
Yeah. Yeah.
Inception, 12 Monkeys. Best puzzle, solve it, because there's also like supernatural elements, possibly, maybe not, in this.
Yeah, because there's so many ways. Like, you could watch Mulholland and just be kind of like, well, I get that. But then there's so much deeper layers to it that there's so much hidden in there. Like, there's so much in the background. It's so clever.
Like, on the surface, you've got, similar to Blue Velvet, this brilliant, engaging, you could just watch it on this level and love the film, like noir mystery movie. This woman with who's got amnesia, and this budding young actor who's come to Hollywood, and she's trying to work out who she is. Then on the next level, you've got this like cynical satire of the Hollywood system. Lynch is obviously no fan of that, after, especially
Yeah.
after June, but like continuously, like the person who's running it all is the cowboy. It's a fairly obvious metaphor. Then under that, you've got this endlessly deep character study, endlessly deep, of Naomi Watts, Naomi Watts's character. It's absolutely incredible. And then under that, there's a horror movie, and then under
Yeah.
that, there's a black comedy. It's just incredible.
There's every layer of everything in this movie. Like, it's watch this 10, 20 time kind of movie to try and decipher what is going on. Like, I
I
have
mean,
my theories, but I'm not even gonna try and attempt
are
it.
they? I can't spoil it. I can't.
Yeah,
I was just about to make some
exactly.
jokes
Yeah.
about it, but I literally can't spoil it. The sequence that ushers in the third act of the film, where the carpet is pulled out from under you,
Uh-huh.
one of the greatest sequences of any movie ever. Club
Yeah.
Silencio.
Unbelievably. Yeah.
I mean, directing at its finest with the backing track. The story is so engrossing. The characters are so charismatic and watchable. But I mean, we talked about the jump scare. We talked about one of the scariest sequences of all time. People don't talk. There's a scene where someone has got to get a book, and it's hilarious. There's a scene where someone walks into their house and Green Onions is playing in the background. It's incredible. It's really funny on that level. It's such a watchable movie, and it works on every level. It is an all-time great film. I mean, not just Naomi Watts, Justin Theroux. is so good
Yeah,
in this
yeah.
too. And I think we should mention that this was a TV pilot as well. This was a Twin Peaks spin-off initially,
It
uh,
was,
that
yes, yeah.
became its own thing.
Yeah, because you can see definitely hints of Twin Peaks-esque stuff in there. Ideas he had going on and kind of vibes within there, and he kind of, we'll talk about it later on maybe, but he brings
Might
it back
might
in.
still be in the shared
It
universe.
might still be in the shared universe, yeah. But what an
There are
amazing
clips of the
movie.
pilot online. I don't think it's. I mean, it's definitely never properly been released. But yeah, adapted into a film that became an all-time classic. This is like even before I saw Twin Peaks, and I kind of with like, oh, I get David Lynch. This was like a 10 out of 10 on first watch
Oh
instantly.
yeah, absolutely. Everybody knows that it is. And then you even when you get David Lynch, then you're like, oh, this is even further.
Yeah. But like I went on the re-release of it after it was voted the best film of the 21st century, and they were like, quick, get this out again. I went with my dad and brother, who frequently get annoyed at the films I have taken them to. And to my surprise, they both came out being like, this is one of the best films I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that good. Where do we go
It's
after this,
it
Sterny?
was
Where
so
do we?
hard to talk about without spoiling. It's so annoying
Yeah,
because
I
there's so
know.
much I want to say about the plot. Like the main thing to talk about Mulholland Drive is what it's about, and I feel like I can't say
You
a
just
single word
can't.
about it.
You have to experience it before you talk about it.
I mean, I would say if you have never seen a David Lynch film, I'd actually tell you to watch Twin Peaks. But other than watching Twin Peaks, this would be the thing I'd tell our audience listening if they're complete newbies to David Lynch to go and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So after Mulholland Drive, David Lynch has a lot of experimental stuff online, and then he's like, okay, I want to kind of make a film out of this. Digital has just started, and David Lynch is not like a kind of Christopher Nolan or Tarantino
No,
figure
no.
who fucking hate digital and think it's a like a bastardization. To David Lynch, digital is like the freedom to go make whatever he wants. He can film whatever, however much footage he wants and cut it all together, and it doesn't matter. And he goes and buys a kind of prosumer grade camera, but we're talking early 2000s, so even a couple of $1,000 camcorder is like it's in standard definition, this
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
Like they got a Blu-ray release recently, and everyone's kind of like, don't watch it on Blu-ray, don't watch it on
There's
4K.
no point, yeah.
It's the only film to actually experience on DVD. And goes and makes this experimental film, chopping together a lot of bits from his online stuff like Rabbits, with Laura Dern and Jeremy Irons. It's his weirdest film, which is saying something.
Yeah, yeah.
It was described, the plot of the film is it's about a woman in trouble. That is true. That's the plot of the
She
film.
is in trouble.
Like it starts out in a kind of surreal but real world, and then sort of half hour into the film there's like a little dark spot in the back of this film set which she's working on this film that Jeremy Irons is doing, and she goes through it, and then it becomes Lynch, pure
Just, yeah.
unadulterated Lynch for the next 2.5 hours. It's 3 hours long. It's a tiring watch.
It's a hard watch, Inland Empire. We didn't even say it was inland, but yeah, it's Inland Empire.
Oh, it's Inland Empire.
Yeah, it is a difficult watch to get through. It's like this is what people think all Lynch is this movie who don't know Lynch.
That's the thing with this. You actually have to be a hardcore Lynch fan. You have to be like, I love Lynch's surreal imagery. I love his vibe. You have to love those things because it's incomprehensible.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
it's a
there's
load of ideas stitched together. There is a plot, but
kind of.
yeah, kind of, like you say. Like, it's a load of vibes. There is a mystery plot with this film and the original version of this film, etc., etc. But yeah, it's Laura Dern wandering through a lot of fucked up things.
Yeah, yeah. I still think it's an okay film. Like
I like it.
yeah, I quite like it, and it's such an odd one. Like some of the moments give off Neil Breen fucking vibes, and then some of it like it's so
We need to do a supercut of this
insane.
podcast anytime we compare anything to Breen, because I feel it happens on an episode by episode basis at this
Yeah,
point.
most probably. He is the most genius filmmaker on.
Of course, David Lynch is at a two. You said he's your second. We can reveal your favorite director is
Yeah,
of
but
course Neil
sorry, the
Breen.
big reveal is Neil Breen is number one.
I like it. I feel like, again, it was very divisive when it came out, even amongst Lynch fans, and it got re-released this year, and, you know, when it gets re-released, everyone calls it a masterpiece because it's made by David Lynch.
Yeah.
I'd give this a 7 out of 10. It's the only
Yeah, same. Yeah.
David Lynch film I have seen once.
Yeah, because it's a 3 hour long movie as well. Like, and it's not an easy. It's not like a Scorsese where something's happening and it's warranting it. Like, this is just insane. Like,
That's what I mean when Lynch talks about like freeing himself up with digital. Like they shot like 9 hours for this and cut it
yeah,
down to
yeah,
3. But you've got some truly terrifying moments. Again,
yeah. You do.
one of the
Yeah,
scariest jump scares is in this film.
the face.
The
Yeah,
face. You've got mad bits with sort of tons of extra. The dance sequence in it is like, it made me smile. Like the creativity. The soundtrack is brilliant. A lot of very weird bluesy kind of stuff in it. The SD kind of handheld style, you know, it's
it's
kind of trying
so.
to, yeah,
Yeah,
it's trying to
it,
ape a bit like a home movie, and it works really effectively. Like even the first scene when her neighbor, who's Sarah Palmer in Twin Peaks,
yeah.
comes in and starts talking to her, is really unsettling.
It is like such extreme close ups and like it's such a very unsettling movie, like from start to finish. Like because a lot of it is like these weird vignettes that have been stitched in there, it creates a really unsettling feeling a lot of the way through. Like the rabbit shit just it's quite a weird and disturbing movie, but it's not like dark like a lot of his other ones. Like
It is dark. I'd say it's very,
yeah,
very dark.
it's very dark, but it's not like as intense in a way as a lot of his other ones. It's more creates a weird
I I would say it's
vibe to
probably
it.
going I'd say it probably is going for that intensity. I would just say that it's not quite as good as Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive or Blue Velvet,
No,
so the intensity isn't quite as visceral. Like I was saying, I think this is the only Lynch film. This and well, June you'd recommend for other reasons. It's the only Lynch film I'm like, you have to love Lynch. If you love Lynch, you must watch Inland Empire because
yeah, yeah.
this is uncut Lynch, but it's
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 like
it's
even it's for those Lynch
unwatchable to
fans
most
that are
people.
even above me a little bit, where they're all into his crazy art pieces and everything,
Oh,
and like
yeah, I think that was a good time to kind of mention, like, you know, some of his short films are like baffling. Like, I've seen all of Dumbland, and I'm like, okay, cool.
yeah,
Rabbits works really well in Inland Empire, but 40 minutes of it online, okay, cool. What Did Jack Do was a fucking shitpost. It was
yeah, it
very
was such a
funny as a
shit post.
shitpost,
Yeah,
but you know, like I like that, but like it's not like wow, my mind is blown. You know, even some of his early stuff, I don't think it's bad. I mean, he got grants based on how amazing his short films were, but like his paintings and his shorts don't really do it for me.
no,
I mean,
no,
he's done adverts, which are, you know, good. They're David Lynch adverts. He's done music videos, which are real good.
yeah,
Perfect Drug is a good bloody music video.
obviously, yeah, yeah,
9 Inch Nails, they just love movies so much.
they do.
They're working with Lynch and Fincher and everything. I mean, no wonder Trent Reznor's become the one of the best, you know, soundtracks, movie score artists ever.
Yeah, if you wanted to hear me gush about a human, we could talk about Trent Reznor.
But after making this, which was like his, this is kind of, you know, it's borderline an art piece. I want to stress it's a good film, and I think it's worth watching if you love Lynch completely. And I do really like it, and I did want to watch it in the cinema when it was re-released, and I just missed my opportunity. Laura
Yeah.
Dern is outstanding, and David Lynch campaigned for her to win an Oscar
Oh,
by getting a
the
cow
donkey.
and sitting
Or it was a
outside the
cow, wasn't it?
academy.
Yeah. Just what a shitpost of a man, honestly.
As if the Academy would watch anything like Inland Empire and award it with anything.
Oh, I love him. I love him so much.
But yeah, he retired from filmmaking forever
Yeah.
after this. Went to work on his paintings. I went to an exhibit of his paintings at home in Manchester when they did a whole David Lynch season. I wasn't really blown away by his paintings. They are paintings David Lynch.
Yeah.
Like you like, oh cool, this is all your imagery. He did music. I don't really like his music that much.
No,
Uh,
same. Yeah.
but I got into David Lynch, what, like around 2011, 2012-ish. So I was just like, cool. He's old. I'm not, you know, gonna experience. He's a classic director. It's like, you know, watching Stanley Kubrick stuff. You know, I don't have to ever experience any new David Lynch. That's okay. Oh boy.
And then
And then David Lynch gives us 18 fucking hours at age 77, so in his mid 70s,
Yep.
gives us 18 hours of some of the craziest, best things he's ever made in his entire life. And that was Twin Peaks: The Return. And it was on every Monday after Game of Thrones on Sky Atlantic. And Game of Thrones was still decent then, in my
It
opinion.
was pretty good at that point still, Game of Thrones,
I
yeah.
was not like every Monday. I was not like, ooh, Game of Thrones. I was just like Twin Peaks, Twin Peaks, Twin Peaks. Like I
Yeah.
think it's the only thing I've ever described like this, where I've said to many people that I legitimately felt privileged to be able to watch this. That's actually how I viewed it.
Twin Peaks: The Return is one of the best things I've ever seen put to anything in my life. It's hard to talk about because there's so much in this that we could spoil. Like it is. We watched the first two episodes together the night they were
Yeah.
released, and
We
we
planned to
were,
watch all four because they released the first four in one go. And after
yeah.
the first double bit episode, it was a two-parter, we were just like, we can't. That was too intense.
It was so intense. Like there's so much in this, and we had no idea what to expect, and it is nothing we could
Like,
have ever expected.
it's I mean, the run up to the show, I think we should talk about the run up to this show
Yeah, yeah.
airing before. Like, all the Twin Peaks cast and David Lynch start tweeting that gum you like is coming back in style. Like some quotes from Twin Peaks, and everyone's like, oh my god. And then it's revealed David Lynch is doing Twin Peaks season 3. I'll see you again in 25 years. He was fucking right.
He was correct. It was
And that's how the
25
show
years
starts, isn't
later.
it? 25 years later, they're coming back. Then David Lynch fucking quits,
Yeah.
and the studio and Showtime, because it's on Showtime now, were like, he didn't tell us this because there was budgetary dispute. All the cast start doing videos where they're like, you gotta have David Lynch on. David Lynch, genius, because he gets to do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yep.
He gets an ungodly amount of money to make 18 hours of Twin Peaks, and it starts, and you hear the Twin Peaks theme, and then it's cuts to New York City, and it's like nothing like Twin Peaks, the original one was. And this is, 2017. It's at the time where everything's getting remakes and soft reboots and everything. And this is such a fuck you to that. It's like, you want nostalgia? I'm giving you it tiny little sprinkles of
Yeah.
nostalgia, but you're getting something
Tiny
totally different.
you get tiny glimmers of the original in there, like even like crying at pictures of Laura Dern and stuff. There's just tiny little, oh, that's like the parody again before it cuts hard back to reality almost in it.
So David Lynch trolls the audience so hard in it. Like, the way he does Dougie as a character is like my favorite thing ever, because you start out being like very funny, then you get really frustrated and
Yeah,
angry,
because
and
Coop
then by the
just
end you're like,
isn't
I
in
love him.
this. Like Coop is in it for about 40 minutes of 18 hours.
Like, the trailer was just kind of atmosphere. There was the cast list drop, and it had the most absolutely insane cast list on ever. It was like every cool person ever is
Yeah.
in this show. Everyone is lining up to work with David Lynch. And yeah, this really explores the lore really well. It explores the consequences at the end of, what happens at the end of the original run. It's so dark,
Oh my god, yes.
and it's really funny.
There is one episode that is the best episode of TV ever made.
Episode 8 is the best episode of
I'm
television ever
not
made, yeah.
going to spoil what happens in that, but oh my god. Like, it
That
is.
episode starts out with a musical performance, and you think, okay, this is the highlight of the episode. It can't get better than this. And then it gets better than that.
It destroys everything I thought I knew about TV and storytelling. And like the way it goes into the lore of Twin Peaks, like we had no idea what way it was gonna go. It's like unbelievable.
There's so many strands. I mean, there's a strand back in Twin Peaks. There's like every character's doing his own thing. Like Dr. Jacoby is now Alex Jones.
Yeah, I know it's so weird, but
It's so weird. It's like that. You got David Gordon Cole, David Lynch's character and Alfred Molina's character, and the new detective Tammy, who I think's a genius character, and
yeah,
people don't know what
yeah.
to do, is back. There were so many surprises. I can't even spoil. Like, there was
Oh,
someone's name on the cast list, and you kind of think, oh, what if?
Yeah,
And
and it is.
ah,
It is if
like if anyone was going to that, it's that person. I hope you like us talking. If you've seen Twin Peaks: Return, you know what we're talking about,
yeah.
hands down. You know, Carl McLaughlin. Give that man every acting award
Oh, I
ever.
love
How
him
many
so
characters is he
much.
playing in this? And he's a genius.
He's so good. He's amazing.
But like, there's so much personality. Like, two of my favorite Twin Peaks characters introduced in this, which is the Mitchum brothers.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
so like David Lynch's comical gangsters. Like you see it in Lost Highway in the tailgating sequence. It's so funny, and like there are some horrific moments in this. Like there's a bit in episode 1 where he's like, "What do you do?" "Oh, I look in this box to see if something comes in the box,
Oh my
but nothing's
god.
come in the box ever." One of the scariest sequences ever. But then there's like a bit in one of the episodes where they're trying to swat away a fly, and it's one of the most genius comedy sequences ever.
Yeah.
That's if you've seen the viral video of David Lynch being like, "Who the fuck cares if the scene's too long?" It's that scene, and it's genius.
He's it's the return is a culmination of everything great Lynch has ever done. It's so fucking brilliant. Just watch it. Like,
Every character interaction is so joyful to watch. It's so good. This is a man in his 70s. This is a man who has changed cinema, changed art house cinema, changed surrealist cinema, fucking debatably, no, not debatably, changed popular culture
yeah,
at
yeah.
every level, and he's still finding ways to surprise you. Because like Inland Empire, I don't think there's anything like a David Lynch fan would be surprised in at that.
No, absolutely
This,
not.
he's still finding ways to surprise you. Like there's so many moments could be the greatest short film of all time, and they're all in this show.
And they're all in one show. It's his magnum opus almost. It's like his
Yeah,
swan
it's up
song.
there.
It's ridiculous. Like it's so good. Like
Higher Du Cinema put this as the greatest film of the 2010s. It's not a film. It's not
it's
even a fucking miniseries. It's the third season of a television show that started in the 90s. I hate that pretentious wankery of Twin Peaks: The Return is so good, it's not actually a show, it's a film. It's a show,
it's a
and
show.
it's the best
Yeah.
season of television ever made.
Yeah. I would sign that as well.
Like I kind of said before, it was really interesting to read that it starts out and like the main audience is the original people watching Twin Peaks, and the audience just 100% changes. Like my mum was around for Twin Peaks at the time, and she said she didn't quite get it at the time. I watched the original run with her when I got the DVDs of it. We loved it watching it together. We watched most of season 3 together, and she was like, "I wouldn't have stuck with this if I wasn't watching it with
Oh
you,"
no,
basically.
absolutely not. No, I could see so many original fans being like, "What the fuck?" Like,
Zara, my girlfriend doesn't like season 3.
oh
I'm
my god.
blown. She's the only person I know, and then everyone else that I talk to loves it. Validates how wrong she is on that one. But it is so different, and you come from this like colorful, cult, quirky television show, and then you get something much slower, much bleaker, much weirder, with about 50 billion story arcs,
Yeah,
all of which work.
and everybody you want to see comes back. Like everybody.
I mean, there's a whole thing, like a lot of, because this is 25 years after Twin Peaks, and you know, it's not like everyone in Twin Peaks was super young when they did it. So like a lot of people on the verge of death, like that
Yeah,
starts
yeah.
with Catherine Coulson as the log lady. Like she was properly on the verge of death doing her bit. David Bowie was on the way out while this was filming. So what they do with his character is not only so David Lynch, but it's so genius.
It's so good. Yeah.
Because you know he's going to be in it. Because he has to be if they're exploring the lore of Twin Peaks. And what they do when he's in it, really near the end, you're like, this is genius.
It's so good. It is such a perfect way to end kind of talking about David Lynch as well and everything because it's all of his stuff in there.
Also, what I need to add as well, never ever in ever has a fictional show, like a non-fiction, drama, ever promote the phrase, "Oh, I wonder which band is on Twin Peaks this week."
Yeah, I know. Like, it's such a genius little thing that he's got in there. It's a band plays every time, and it unbelievable performances as well.
I think the most controversial thing in this is what they do with Audrey's character. And I love the
Yes,
bit she's
definitely.
in, but I think creative differences between David Lynch and Sheryl Lynn Fenn means she is sidelined. I do love
Yeah,
the bits with her in it, and I love the end. I love the end of that arc and what I think that arc means.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I see why people take a bit of issue with that. That's kind of
Yeah,
it for
same.
criticism.
That's all the criticism, that little 20-second.
What's your favorite bit of Twin Peaks: The Return, and say it is ambiguous as possible?
Ooh, my
Because
favorite
mine
bit.
is.
Um, it's got to be in episode 8. It's
Oh, we're
got to
gonna
be.
have the same bit, aren't we?
Which bit are you going to say? Let's see.
After the musical performance, it cuts to black, and then it cuts to like a. It cuts to like what would that be? 60 years prior. It cuts to
Yeah,
1945.
there you go.
Yeah.
Also my favorite.
Uh, I love Mr. Jackpot as well. Hello!
Oh my
Anything with the
god,
Mitchum
yes.
brothers.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a scene where someone goes for coffee with a character and is trying to poison them. And it's, again, that Lynch tone. It's hysterical, it's touching, all at the
Yeah.
same time. Actually, no, I'll tell you my favorite moment of it, possibly even better than the bomb, is like the start of one of the episodes when they're coming in a conga line to the office.
Oh my
I
god, yes.
died of laughter.
In episode 8, I think my favorite bit might be him talking into the radio.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, I think that's might be my favorite bit.
That's one of the things that's really interesting. Like in Fire Walk with Me and some of the like surrealist Red Room sequences, there's stuff in it for like a split second that becomes like super important lore. And the
Yeah.
fact that like when David Lynch returned to this, he's properly like, we're going to not explicitly, because Dave, you got to think, you've got to piece things together yourself. That's why Twin Peaks was such a success in the first place. We're gonna properly kind of add more pieces to the puzzle. Like, we say it's a troll and it's a subversion of expectation, but also, if you want more Twin Peaks, this is the best thing you could have ever asked
Yeah.
for.
This is the everything that we hoped and more in what we wanted.
Unless you have anything to add on Twin Peaks, I'm so fucking happy we've done this episode.
Yeah, no, same. We did it.
Let me see, how long have we been talking? Okay, I think I'm going to split this one into two parts, possibly.
Yep.
Maybe not. If you're listening to a 2-hour episode, I didn't, and if you're listening to 2 1-hour ones, I did.
I've had the time up here the entire time, and I was like, okay, this has gone as longest easily.
Oh, well, we knew it. Like we were saying
Yeah.
before, like we talked about less things in the French New Extremity special, and that went an hour. And this is not only more films, but this is David Lynch we're talking about. Like, we could have done hour-long deep dive into everything. Like, we haven't deep dived into the films. Not just we haven't gone spoilers, we have barely talked about
Oh,
behind the
yeah.
scenes stuff, because this is just an overview of David Lynch and the greatest director of all time. And I love him. And you
Yep.
know something? I actually want to end like this. I know like quite a few people now are getting into film. I don't know why. Everyone in the last year has just decided they're going to get into film, which I'm very, very happy about. No gatekeeping here.
God, no.
And it brings me so much joy when people have started watching David Lynch's films and they're watching Mulholland Drive, or generally Mulholland Drive, but Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks for the first time. You know, these are things that meant the world to me when I was a teenager, still mean the world to me, still like some of the most important art in my life, like ever. And they're gushing about it and they've seen it for the first time, and I'm like reliving me watching it for the first time, and it's like incredible. And it's just another little thing of making me appreciate how like David Lynch has like totally formed my life, like more than just my
Yep.
taste in art, like my life. I don't think anything's gonna happen like finding his films. Like, I'd say maybe watching The Simpsons obsessively as a child is number one and can't be taken away from me. Maybe Tarantino, when I found his films, that's sort of on a par with Lynch, maybe. But David Lynch is one of the single most important things in my life.
Yep. What a way to end it.
No hyperbole in this
No
episode. I
hyperbole
want to
was.
reiterate again. Every time I've said, or we've said, one of the greatest or the greatest of all time, we mean it.
Yep, no hyperbole whatsoever. It genuinely, David Lynch has affected our lives. Like the big thing Sterny just did there, and for me, it's so much as well. It was my favourite director for a while, is now my number 2, but it's such a profound on the way that I view cinema, on the way that I view art in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's just everything.
Do you want to tell people who your favorite director is?
it's not Neil Breen. It's Richard Linklater is now my favorite.
It's like the polar opposite of David
Yeah, I know. It's
Lynch.
so funny.
I adore Linklater. We could, if we were doing a different podcast, we would do a like 5 hour
Oh,
episode on Dazed and
absolutely.
Confused.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, season 2. Applause,
Season
applause,
2,
applause.
everybody.
We did it. I've loved this season. It's gone completely off the rails, and
Oh,
I'm here
absolutely.
for it.
It's gone everywhere.
Like, I like how it starts off. Like, the audition episode was a fairly normal episode. So's the El Topo, and then
Yeah.
everything else is like bonkers we've done.
Yeah, it's all insane. And this is like the size of like the big podcasts that people do. Like this is a long one.
I know, right? I mean, we could have done a D&D campaign in this
Yeah, I
time.
know.
Thank you all for tuning in.
Yes, thank you very much.
I probably will cut this in 2, unless I haven't cut it in 2, in which case you've listened to 2 hours straight. But
Absolute maniacs.
I know, right? No, we really, really, really appreciate everyone listening to this. Whether you're a regular listener, or you just click on one episode and you're like, oh, I'm interested in this thing and I want to. The episodes, without getting into specific analytics, there's a ridiculous discrepancy in views for some of them, and it's
Yeah,
almost random when they do it. But like, any single person listening to us talk about film for any length of time, it means the world to both of us.
absolutely, yeah.
I'm still planning something special. I don't know when it's happening. Probably next
No
year.
idea. Probably next
No
year
idea when it's
sometime.
happening.
Yeah.
But I'm planning something special, probably next year. Who knows if we'll be back for season 3?
We will be back.
We'll be back, apparently. So I hear. Don't hold your breath anytime soon, though. But
No, but we will.
We will. Thank you again for listening, and see you next year, potentially.
Yes, goodbye, everyone.
Fucking 2 hours and 5 minutes. You've been listening to the Extreme Cinema Podcast with Alexander Sternberg and Dom Loach. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider subscribing, as it really helps us out. The original artwork for the podcast was done by George Arnold. The Extreme Cinema Podcast, available where all good podcasts are available.